The only way the left is able to keep winning is by lying. And it's very obvious when you look at what happened in Virginia with critical race theory allowed in county schools and the results of the election. People don't like the idea that their children are being taught things like you're evil based on your race and things as simple as that. They're not going to kids and saying, let me teach you the history of colonization and indigenous conflicts and things like that. They don't do that. They just say whiteness is bad. These kids end up going home telling their parents, and the parents say, this is nuts. You see, a good parent wants their kid to understand as much about the world as possible. And that means something like, hey, Christopher Columbus didn't discover America. He didn't. He landed in the Bahamas. And furthermore, there were already people here. Hey, that's like simple logic, right? And then you can talk about the history and the disputes. Christopher Columbus was, by some historians, considered to be a brutal dictator, an evil man, and some argue that's not necessarily true. In fact, I've had people argue to me, not true at all. A smart person and a good parent wants their kid to hear it all. But that's not what critical race praxis is. What they're doing is they're saying things that are completely out of touch with reality, and it's freaking parents out. We are now getting the backlash from the cult. You see, as I mentioned, in order to win, they have to lie. So what they're saying now is white parents don't want their kids to learn the truth. But we're not talking about truth. We're not talking about history. No one's bringing up Native Americans, Leif Erikson, Christopher Columbus. That's not what's being taught. What's being taught are books that show a whiteness contract with a white arm, a white person's arm, and a devil tail saying that you will do these evil things if you sign on. There's a book, I forget what it's called, but we had Asra Nomani on IRL showing this, where the little girl is screaming, Mom, you're lying to me. White people are evil. I'm paraphrasing. She didn't really say white people are evil, but she's like, I know the truth. And there's a contract and it says whiteness contract. Yeah, teaching kids that on the basis of your race, you should be treated differently is wrong. Parents said enough. Interestingly, it was many white women, which brings us to the backlash from the cult. Now, before I show you these articles, I want to give a shout out to Christopher Rufo and James Lindsay, two of the most prominent voices pushing back against all of this. And of course, I mentioned Asra Nomani, who has shown all these books, collected them. And these people are insane. These critical race theorists, they argue things that make no sense. And it may be unfair to say insane because they may be cold and calculating, knowing that they're lying and manipulating to disrupt and destroy. What they're effectively trying to do is rewind the clock on civil rights to bring us back to an era when segregation still existed. There's a photo I posted on Twitter, actually. I should have pulled it up, where it's a bunch of activists who argued they think desegregation, the sign they hold up says this, is racist. These activists want segregation. And the funny thing is, when I've been telling my friends this, because I have a lot of lefty friends, they're like, that's not true. No, that's not true. Now they're marching around with signs saying it. Take a look at this story from the Daily Beast. You damn Karens are killing America. Opinion. Oops, they did it again. And then you can see what appears to be, these people are nuts. It is a blonde haircut. I don't know what haircuts are called. And it's a white woman dressed as the Statue of Liberty holding a green tiki torch. Amazing. Wait till you see this. But I don't want to bury the lead on this one because I know you saw the title. This is big news. Black Lives Matter is underwater. And there it is. The flip happened mid-October. Support went 44% support for Black Lives Matter, 43% opposition. And currently we are now sitting at 44% opposition and 43% support. Following the results of the Virginia gubernatorial election, I decided to take a look at Black Lives Matter support. I was surprised to find white women now oppose Black Lives Matter. That to me was actually surprising. We can see here in general, across all demographics, it is now 44% opposition. Black Lives Matter is now in the gutter. We also have this from Axios. Anti-CRT school board candidates are winning because what they're claiming, what the left claims they're teaching is a lie. It's remarkable when you see these tweets. Let's just dive into this stuff. Take a look at this. From Fox News, Virginia Lieutenant Governor-elect Winsome Sears slams Jemele Hill after sports writer blames white supremacy for her win. This is Winsome Sears. She's a black woman. She was voted in by everyone, but also white people. White people voting for a black person. And here she is holding a weapon of some sort. I'm assuming it's an AR-15 of some type. And Jemele Hill says it's not the messaging, folks. This country simply loves white supremacy. You see, this is the lie they have to try and push. Because there are a lot of lefty, well-to-do liberal types who don't know and don't care. And they hear in the media and they hear on TV that white supremacy is alive and well. And it works when it's a feared other like Donald Trump. When you have Republicans and they say, I don't like Republicans. I don't want to be right wing. Oh, right wing is evil. So they say they're all racist. They're all alt-right. They're all far right. And then things start to get really weird. Because all of a sudden you end up with someone like me. Milquetoast, fence sitter, middle of the road. I think the milquetoast fence sitter thing is funny personally. I was the one initially, like someone commented it and then I started using it. The reality is I'm very staunchly pro-liberty and very pro-2A, so not particularly fence-sittery on those positions. People just say that because I don't support them. But no, I very much stand up for certain core values and principles. And then something interesting happens. When I say these people are lying, very simply, their only response is tell everyone he's right-wing. Which gets really interesting because I know a lot of people who are like big fans of Joe Rogan who are also like, oh, but I don't like that Tim Pool. And I'm just like, people don't have to like me, I guess. But I find it very interesting because on many political issues, I'm actually more moderate than Joe. When Joe comes out and criticizes the establishment, he does so often to a further degree than I would. And there are some areas where I would, be critical of the establishment. But the interesting thing is, maybe people are finally starting to wake up to the realities of what the Democratic Party really represents. This is a black woman. I don't care that she's a black woman. I mean, I actually, I take that back. I think diversity does matter. But this is the manipulation. Diversity matters in the sense that people of different perspectives can allow us to better understand the world and make better decisions. But when you have a homogenous worldview, it doesn't matter what you look like. That's not diversity. So I think it's great, that we have more, people of different backgrounds who can help create a robust worldview. But ultimately, what do I care about? Your values, your principles, and whether or not you're going to help make this country better and improve the lives of the people everywhere, really. I mean, the whole world. We want to improve the world, But see, the people in the Democratic Party are lying in order to gain power. Why? Well, they want to, the cult at the very least. It is a chaotic, destructive force. And this is what people need to understand. They seek only to destroy, like fire. It just consumes and destroys. It preserves nothing, conserves nothing, and brings liberty to no one. And that's what I realized a long time ago. And I remember having this conversation with someone in my family when they were like, all you do is rag on Democrats, Tim. When are you going to talk about the Republicans? And I'm just like, what do Republicans do? For real, what do Republicans do? I mean, we hear about them all day and night, right? We hear all day and night that the Republicans are the white supremacy party. And I'm like, what have they done? Oh, I'm sorry. Nothing. They have no political power. They sit on their hands. It has been years with Republicans out of power. And what did they do when they were in power? Agreed with Democrats, sided against Trump, supported Russiagate. It's the uniparty. It's always been. But you see, when Donald Trump came in, establishment neocon shills joined the Democrats. Bill Kristol endorsed McAuliffe. You see how this works? The establishment is unified behind the Democrats. And the funny thing is, now many of my friends and family have come around lately being like, what is wrong with the Democrats? I'm like, oh, you finally started paying attention, have you? Look what they are defending. Look at this story. Democrats aren't going to win over the majority of white women, and they need to stop trying and instead court the diverse coalition that can save the country from itself. Wajahat Ali. Depicting white women as tiki torch-bearing statues of liberty is sure going to help them win. Let me go back to the poll and show you what's going on. Here we have Black Lives Matter underwater, losing support. And let's go by race. Among white people in general, 53% oppose Black Lives Matter. Among Black and African American, 81% support. Hispanic and Latino, 56% support. And other, 49% support. I really don't like the other category because I think you need to separate Asians from whatever else the other is supposed to mean. And if it just means Asian, then maybe you should just create an Asian category, but sure. Let's take a look at the white race and how they feel. Among white Democrats, 86% support Black Lives Matter. 18 to 34-year-old white people support Black Lives Matter, but across the board, here is the opposition. It is massive. Take a look at this. White people, back in 2017, 51% opposed Black Lives Matter across the board. After the George Floyd incident, there was 43% support. And now we can see that it has been increasing, the opposition. Currently, 53% oppose Black Lives Matter, more so than 4 years ago. But here's what I'm really interested to see. Let's do female. Let's take a look at where white women are. This is where it gets interesting. You see, white women have long supported Black Lives Matter as opposed to men. White men overwhelmingly opposed Black Lives Matter for a long time. So we can go back to 2018, and that's when white women started to support Black Lives Matter. After the George Floyd incident, 50% of white women supported Black Lives Matter. And we can then move down past Derek Chauvin, and we can see that it flipped. And currently, 46% opposition, 41% support. That is to say that because of white women, Black Lives Matter made the majority. The support did, for the most part. This was a major supporting factor in Black Lives Matter becoming mainstream, white women. But because of critical race theory, because of the school board members, it is now inverting. These suburban white women are being credited with helping Youngkin win in Virginia. And it's not just there. Across the board, Republicans crushed Democrats. And it's because I think people are finally starting to wake up. They're finally starting to realize what critical race theory really means. And they'll lie. There's already an article saying Tucker Carlson doesn't know what it is. They've already done their media supercut on MSNBC where they try and lie, desperate to keep stupid people in check. And not just stupid people, but a lot of regular people who don't know better, who turn on MSNBC and just believe it. And there are a lot of YouTubers who do the same thing. Policy is a different question. You know, you want to talk about taxes and foreign policy and things like that. I got my opinions for sure. You'll find that when it comes to social programs, social justice, and taxes, I'm typically center-left. But what's that? When it comes to the culture war, I'm pro-freedom and truth. And that means they have to tell everyone I'm right-wing. Why? If a regular person who doesn't know anything about this, in fact, I'll tell you this. I recently was talking to someone, a person I had just met, and they were explaining to me that they were, if they had to pick, Democrat. And I said, well, if you watch my show, you probably don't like Democrats. And they were like, oh, well, you know, I don't like Republicans. And I was like, I don't like Republicans either. But Republicans don't do a whole lot. There's a small handful of Republicans who actually do things. Rand Paul, I call them the rhinos, the Republicans in name only. Why? Because they're actually more libertarian in their principle. The Republican Party is garbage. So it's not fair to lump them all in together, is it? And they're in the minority. But this person just didn't understand. And then when we got to talking, and they talked about the economy being bad, they talked about the endless booster shots. They said inflation is through the roof. Everything's costing me more money. I'm extremely unhappy. And I said, have you thought about why that is? Have you thought about who's in power? Have you thought about the repercussions? Are you concerned about gas prices? Yes? Okay. Joe Biden shut down Keystone Pipeline, sparking rampant speculation that this oil supply would be diminished. Speculators started buying up oil like crazy, driving the prices up, causing a ripple effect. Not only that, but he banned fracking on public lands. These things had a negative impact on the working class. Now, you'll get USA Today and all these other fact checkers saying Joe Biden's policies are not causing a rise in gas prices. It's just demand. Well, why is there such demand? Because Joe Biden's policies created a fear that we will not be able to reach supply in the future. It's all interconnected. Now, if these people were paying attention, they'd understand that. But they don't. And it's not necessarily their fault. These are good people. And that's why it's important to lie about someone like me. That's why it's important to say that even though I'm like, I like environmental regulations, I do. Even if it does mean gas prices might be up a little bit. It's a tough call. It is. But I think humans are contributing to the destruction of this planet. I think that involves climate change and a whole bunch of other negative environmental impacts, colony collapse disorder, windshield phenomenon, dead zones in the ocean, the garbage patches. But is that really a left or right wing thing? Apparently it is. But so they'll have to say, don't listen to Tim Pool. He's far right. He's a grifter. Then you poison the well. And you'll get, there was one guy, he was a YouTuber, he did gaming stuff. And he was like, I don't know, I don't listen to Tim Pool because he's right wing. And then all of a sudden people were like, how is he right wing? And he's like, I don't know, he's like complaining about Democrats. And it's like, could it be that that's just the truth? Yeah, it could be. But that's the challenge. There are some people that try and, play that middle of the road game where they're like, well, Democrats aren't so bad, hoping that it'll open the door. The reality is we have an establishment that is going to lie, cheat, and steal in order to gain power. And that's why they're so angry right now. They are recoiling in horror. They are saying that a black woman winning the lieutenant governorship is white supremacy. Then you'll end up with, I've got a lot of doofy Hollywood friends who don't know, don't care, and just say, gotta fit in. If the establishment says it's true, then it's true because that's how I make my bread and butter. And I'm like, well, then you are a dirty, awful person. Oh, can't risk my career. Sorry. This is the problem. They're going after white women because white women are finally starting to realize what critical race theory means. After a decade of people like Carl Benjamin and many other, he was one of the original Gamergate people. But after a decade of this fight, the things that we've all been saying is finally starting to reach these moms when they're like, why is this happening? Well, I'll tell you what. These moms weren't watching YouTube. They weren't paying attention to what we had to say. They started paying attention to their kids. We also owe a great deal of credit to Christopher Rufo, James Lindsay, Peter Boghossian, and Helen Pluckrose, the so-called squared individuals, and those who have been pushing back at the academic level in using these terms and organizing and things like that. I believe it was Matt Walsh who went down to Loudoun and he made a speech, and he's been to these schools. All of this stuff has had a profound impact, but really, I'm not sure anyone really deserves credit. Well, let me explain. I believe it was inevitable. That's what Steve Bannon told me. He said, when these parents see what their schools are doing to their kids, they will revolt. And he was correct. And boy, do I love to say it. I'll say it as many times as I can when we talk about these subjects. That's right. There is a video of a woman, and she said her 6-year-old daughter asked her if she was evil for being born white. And she was shocked that she had to explain to her daughter was not evil. But this is what they're teaching in schools. So they're telling kids. Now we have more breaking news. We have San Francisco is going to be mandating vaccines for people, for kids, I believe 5 to 11 years old. Now, I think ultimately you got to talk to your doctor about what makes sense for you. That's what I did. And, everyone's always like, Tim, my doctor is bad or, oh, I don't. Well, I'll tell you what. Like, if I was able to find a doctor, and I'm not going to say it was easy or anything like that, you can find a doctor who will take your health seriously and who will do right by you or whatever. Find a doctor. And I think it's interesting. If you live in these big cities and you're unwilling to recognize what's happening, if you're unwilling to stand up for your kid's future and what you believe in, you will lose. You absolutely will lose. But here's what changed. In Loudoun County, these parents stopped ignoring the problem. And they said, it is now affecting my kids. Now, truth be told, if the parents stood up before, if the parents came out and voted against these school board members, we might not be here. If the Democrats rejected the cult, they might not be here either. The problem is not every Democrat supports the cult, but I would say almost every Democrat is unwilling to challenge it as they seep into the party and take over. And we talked about this years ago with like the rise of AOC. I said the Democrats are slowly embracing wokeness and it will be their downfall. And now we're hearing that following the crushing defeat in an off-cycle year of Democrats across the board. You hear the story about the truck driver in New Jersey spent $150 to campaign. And I don't know if he won, but he's like neck and neck. People are voting for this guy over the Democrat. Democrats are now apparently going to be retiring. Nancy Pelosi might even be retiring. And the best they can come up with is it's white women's fault and it's white supremacy. Oh, please, just keep saying it. Just keep saying it over and over and over again. Because you're going to lose. There was a poll, I think it was MSNBC was talking about it, how when asked who would do better on these issues, Democrats or Republicans, across the board, American voters said Republicans would do a better job, which means come 2022, we may see a Republican supermajority. If the Democrats want to keep embracing psychosis, if they think that Joe Biden is the appropriate measure, they're doomed. The bill comes due always. So here's what I see happening. Oh, man. They bet on Joe Biden, not because he was a good leader, but because he wasn't Donald Trump. They've now gotten themselves the most soggy, lame presidency they could have ever hoped for. But at least it's not Trump. Now the economy is bad. There's that video I showed the other day, the Latino guy saying Joe Biden turned me into a Republican because he's just doing such a bad job. And now you have the Democrats in Congress can't get anything done. You've got the radicals on one side screaming and pounding on the doors. And then you have only two moderates left, Manchin and Sinema. So regular people are like, I don't know what that is. And so what's happening? They're not white supremacists. They're moderates. And they're voting Republican instead, because what have I said? The Republicans are actually closer to where I am as a moderate than the Democrats are. Spend. No, stop. Are you nuts? They don't represent the working class. They don't represent diverse America. They represent people who don't pay attention. Because when people start paying attention, they say enough, as evidenced by the polling on Black Lives Matter. So what are we going to get? Look, we're still a year away from any meaningful election, and who knows what could happen in a year. Democrats could turn this around. So if Republicans get complacent and start cheering and jumping up and down saying we won an off-cycle year, then Democrats are going to win. And I'll say it again. Democrats are going to win. However, if Republicans stay on hold the center, keep up this footing, push back against this, and Democrats are unwilling to concede that this ideology is psychotic, then they'll lose. But we'll see. In the meantime, they can just keep blaming the white women. All right. Well, I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.